I am Susan Sharp Campbell, Associate for Educational Ministry for the Presbytery of West Virginia, and this video is an orientation to the Presbytery meeting that will be held on Thursday, November 15th at Ronsford Presbyterian Church. My hope is that you have or will download the Presbytery packet, which was sent out in an email on Tuesday, November 6th, or can be found at www.wvpresbytery.org. The Presbytery is no longer printing packets for everyone, so you will need to download it to your computer or tablet. Please do not plan to use the internet at the church during the meeting, as it is limited and needed for presenters. In the advanced packet, you will find 3 sections. In the first section, you will find the docket and committee reports, including the revision to our Presbytery's manual. The second part, which begins after page 83, is the bulletin for morning worship. The third part has a number of flyers with information about upcoming events in the Presbytery. When you arrive and register for the meeting, printed copies of the flyers will be available for you to take with you to share back at your church. As you read the packet and prepare for the meeting, I encourage you to become as informed as possible about the business we will be doing, but I also encourage you not to come to the meeting with your mind made up on how you will be voting on the particular items. We believe that as a church, when we gather in councils, the Spirit of God leads us in discernment and decision-making. Sometimes the Spirit speaks in the voices of those with whom we agree. Other times we may find that the Spirit speaks in the voices of those with whom we may not agree in surprising ways. Reading, praying, and trusting God guides us together will prepare you for the meeting. Now to the meeting. Upon arrival, you'll be greeted by parkers and greeters who will help you find your way to registration and refreshments. The meeting will start promptly at 10 a.m. Some of the key people to note for this meeting are Amy Parker, Minister of Education and the Arts at Village Chapel Presbyterian Church in Charleston, who is our moderator. Anytime you wish to speak during the meeting, you're to address her, not those in the pews. Ed Thompson is our General Presbyter and will have a report. Maureen Wright is our stated clerk and will also have a report. After the moderator calls the meeting to order, Stephen Baldwin, pastor of Ronsford, will bring greetings and share necessary information about the facilities. At the August meeting, the Presbytery voted to dissolve the McElhaney Presbyterian Church at Grassy Meadows. At this meeting, we will be celebrating the life and witness of this congregation. Part of the morning of each Presbytery meeting is devoted for education, information, and/or relationship building. At this meeting, the education focus will be on substance abuse and how the faith-based community can respond. This will be led by Karen Yost of the Presbytery Center in Huntington and a member of First Presbyterian Church, Canova. Following Karen's presentation, Nellie Howard, our Resource Center Director, will share several resources. These and many others in the Resource Center display can be checked out throughout the day. If you have already checked out resources, you may also return them to her at this meeting. We will conclude the morning with worship around the theme of Thanksgiving. As part of worship, we will celebrate the sacrament of the Lord's Supper. Larry Davis from Clifton, Anna Pinckney Strait from Old Stone, Elizabeth Campbell Malecki from First Church Williamstown and Waverly Bethel, and Andy Rice from Oak Grove Presbyterian Churches will lead us in worship. Roger Trent, Doug Hilton, and Leah Trent from the Ronsford Presbyterian Church will lead us in music. The offering received during worship will be given to Presbyterian Disaster Assistance for its ongoing ministry of disaster recovery. You will find the worship bulletin beginning on the pages after page 83 in the packet. If you wish to have a printed worship bulletin at the meeting, you will need to print this document and bring it with you. Following worship, we will break for lunch. Following lunch, we'll return to the formal business of the meeting, beginning with a time of prayer and singing. Any corresponding members, ministers who are laboring within our bounds while remaining members of another presbytery, will be seated with voice. At this meeting, these include Bob Carter, member of Northwest Coast Presbytery, who now lives in Greenville, West Virginia, as well as Doug Ports and Sue Wonderland, who are visiting with us today to bring greetings. This will also be a time for pastors to introduce ruling elders from their congregations who are commissioners to a presbytery meeting for the first time. Once introductions are complete, the stated clerk will make known if a quorum is present. For a stated meeting of the Presbytery, this means that at least 20% of our minister members are present and 20% of our churches are represented by a ruling elder. Once a quorum is declared present, we will vote on the docket and move to the consent agenda, which can be found on page 3. The items on the consent agenda are those that have been deemed not likely to generate discussion, and all actions on the consent agenda will be passed with one vote. However, if any one person would like for any item on the consent agenda to be discussed later in the meeting and request that it be removed, it will be taken up later. Please be aware that being on the consent agenda does not mean an item is unimportant. Items on the consent agenda for this meeting include requests for excused absences, the enrollment of an inquirer, granting of honorable retirement status for several ministers of Word and Sacrament, approval of an installation commission for a minister of Word and Sacrament, approval of moderators in churches without moderators, approval of a variety of pastoral covenants, and the approval for authorized lay preachers who serve as random pulpit supply to preside at communion. You will find additional information about these items in the committee reports in the packet. If, as you review these items, you have questions or concerns, remember that all you have to do is ask for a particular item to be removed when the consent agenda is discussed. The next two items on the docket will be the appointment of temporary clerks. These are ruling elders and teaching elders appointed by the moderator who will hand out any materials during the meeting and count any votes other than voice votes. There will also be the appointment of the Standing Committee on Bills and Overtures. This will be leadership team members present who are to review any new business that's proposed to come before the body and make recommendations. Next are reports by Presbytery staff. Maureen Wright's stated clerk report can be found on page 7. This includes correspondence she has received and updates on 2 administrative commissions working with churches as they come to the end of their ministry. On page 5, you'll find the procedural matters that guide us as a presbytery. These include principles of parliamentary law, courtesy to all, one item at a time, majority rule, respect the rights of the minority, justice for all, and partiality for none. Generally, these are about how to work and play well and respectfully with others as we meet together. As items are discussed, pro and con speakers will alternate, with individuals identifying the positions they support. When one has spoken on a pending question, all others wishing to speak will be heard before a person can speak a second time. It takes special permission for someone to speak on the same question more than twice. On this page, you will also provide provisions from the Presbytery's manual that are helpful at this meeting. All items of new business must be presented in writing to the stated clerk before lunch, unless a different deadline is set at the meeting. It also tells you who, in addition to ruling elder commissioners to this meeting and minister members of the Presbytery, have the ability to speak, privilege of the floor with or without vote. On the last section of page 5, you will find procedural rules. Everybody speaking to the Presbytery, for whatever reason, needs to do so from a microphone. Once the speaker is recognized by the moderator, that person needs to identify himself or herself with name, church name, or relationship to the Presbytery. It's a matter of courtesy, an awareness that some people don't hear as well as they used to, and some don't talk as loudly as they think they do. That though we'd like to think so, everybody in the room doesn't know everyone else. The limitation of debate is 30 minutes per main motion, with each speaker limited to 3 minutes per speech, although this must be approved by 2/3 of those voting on the 15th. As you read the packet, if you see an item you feel called to speak to during the meeting, you might want to consider writing your remarks out to keep you focused and able to use your time wisely. Following the stated clerk's report, we will hear from Ed Thompson, our general presbyter. His written report begins on page 7. In it, you will find his reflections on the reality of our presbytery and his work since our last meeting. We will now move to committee reports, with some reports from individuals interspersed. Committee reports have two parts. The first part contains recommendations from the committee that need to be acted upon by the presbytery. These recommendations do not require a second, as more than one person has already indicated interest in the recommendation coming before the presbytery. The second part of the committee reports provide pieces of information. Many of these are events that are coming up in the future and/or the ongoing work of the committee. Please remember that the information section is an important part of every report, and don't forget to read over it as you read over the recommendation at the top of the committee report page. Finally, on page 6, you'll find a guide to motion basics that will inform our process as we take up recommendations throughout the day. The first committee to make a report will be the Vocations Committee. Vocations Committee is recommending that the Presbytery examine and approve Amanda Hill for ordination as a minister of Word and Sacrament. You will find Amanda's biographical statement on page 12 and her statement of faith on page 13. Amanda has completed all of the requirements set forth for ordination in the Book of Order in section G-6.02 and has been called to serve as a chaplain at the Mary Randolph Babb Cancer Center in Morgantown. The Book of Order says that the presbytery shall examine candidates for ministry on his or her Christian faith and views in theology, the sacraments, and the government of this church, G-3.0306. The chair of the Vocations Committee will ask Amanda questions in each of these areas before the moderator will ask if there are any questions from the floor. It is worth remembering that while we are examining Amanda because she seeks ordination as a minister member of our presbytery, we are in reality also examining her on behalf of the whole denomination. Next up is the report of the Ministry Committee. While a number of their recommendations will have been approved on the consent agenda, there are several other recommendations we will be considering. On page 16, item number 18 recommends that rather than using the Book of Order terms commissioned pastor or commissioned ruling elder, that we go back to the term commissioned lay pastor to refer to ruling elders commissioned to particular service. Recommendation 19 seeks approval of an increase in minimum compensation guidelines for ministers of Word and Sacrament and certified Christian educators in 2019. You will find the rationale for doing so with the recommendation. Recommendation 20 seeks approval for an increase in continuing education compensation of $1,500 per year starting in 2020. Noting this would be the first increase in this item in over 20 years. Recommendation 21 refers to the temporary membership policy for ministers of other denominations serving churches in our presbytery. You will find the policy itself on page 18 in the advance packet. This is in keeping with G-2.0506 in the Book of Order, which states, "A presbytery may enroll a minister of another Christian church who is serving temporarily in a validated ministry in this church or in an installed relationship under the provisions of the formula of agreement when the minister has satisfied the requirements of preparation for such service established by the presbytery's own rule. Approval of this recommendation would set forth the presbytery's own rule." I would also call your attention to the information of the Ministry Committee. In item 5, the suggested compensation for a supply pastor has been raised to $125, with recommendations for travel compensation. At the end of the Ministry Committee report, we will commission several ruling elders to particular service and recognize the ministry and honorable retirement of several ministers of Word and Sacrament. At this point in the meeting, Doug Ports, our presbytery's church consultant from the Board of Pensions, will bring us greetings and information from the Board of Pensions. The leadership team will report next. At the August Presbytery meeting, the Presbytery approved the training of ruling elders to celebrate the sacrament of the Lord's Supper in their particular congregation under the provision in G-3.0301b. If approved, they would be authorized to do so for the remainder of 2018 and all of 2019. At this meeting, the leadership team is recommending that those ruling elders who attended the communion training be approved to celebrate the sacrament of the Lord's Supper in their churches of membership. You will find the list of persons who attended these trainings with their churches on page 21. The background can be found on the bottom of page 21, continuing on to page 22. A second recommendation of the leadership team is the first reading of a revised manual of the Presbytery of West Virginia. G-3.0106 in the Book of Order states, each council shall develop a manual of administrative operations that will specify the form and guide the work of mission in that council. There are a number of revisions being proposed to our current manual, and you will find the overarching themes and concerns on pages 23 and 24 of the packet, many of which are in response to our current reality, which you will see as you read through those themes. You will find the specific revised manual changes on pages 47 to 83. If you're interested in noting how the revised manual compares to the current manual, you will find a marked up copy with current and proposed language on our website, www.wvpresbytery.org. Because it's a first reading, we will not be voting on the manual revision at this meeting. However, if you have questions about the revisions, you will have the opportunity to raise them. You will also have the opportunity to send questions or comments in writing to the Presbytery at office@wvpresbytery.org following the meeting. The leadership team will also be recommending several persons to serve on the Presbytery's nominating committee, thus making it so that the nominating committee doesn't nominate its own members. As with all nominations, there will be an opportunity for others to be nominated. However, please be aware that before anyone is nominated from the floor, the person being nominated must have agreed in advance to serve if elected. I hope that you will also note under the information section of the leadership team that J. Herbert Nelson, the stated clerk of the PCUSA, will be with us at our February 2019 Presbytery meeting. Next, Sue Wonderland, transitional executive of the Synod, will be with us and share greetings with us from the Synod of the Trinity. Good News from the Pews is an opportunity for ruling elders and ruling elders only to share some of the exciting things that are happening in their congregations. Perhaps someone else will hear what another church is doing and find some ideas and inspiration in what is shared. If you or your session's ruling elder commissioner and would like to share, please be prepared to do so in a fairly concise manner and direct your remarks to the moderator using the microphone. The nominating committee will be recommending persons as committee moderators for 2019, to serve as committee members where there are current vacancies, and to serve as ordination exam readers. Again, there will be opportunities for nomination from the floor, but if you want to nominate someone, be sure they've agreed to serve if elected. The administration committee will be recommending the approval of a second term for our stated clerk. This is in keeping with the position description for this officer of the Presbytery. I would also encourage you to note in the information section that the committee and staff are working on a printed brochure that will assist you in knowing how the Presbytery staff might be of assistance to you, to your session, to your congregation. The trustees will be bringing 2 recommendations for the sale of properties of churches that have been or will be dissolved. In addition, you will note under the information section that they have approved the sale of lots by Trinity Presbyterian Church in accordance with our manual process for making decisions that cannot wait until the next scheduled meeting of the Presbytery. You will also see that they continue to seek to sell other former church properties. The Nurture Committee's report will highlight Festival of Faith and other upcoming events. Please consider where you or someone you know might engage in opportunities provided by the Presbytery to grow in faith and service. The Stewardship Committee will be reporting on the results of the financial review. In addition, at this time, Rocky Poole, our financial administrator, will review the financial status of the Presbytery as of the end of the third quarter, the end of September. You will find the financial information on pages 32 to 39. Included in these pages is information on Presbytery's church's mission giving and per capita payments through September 2018. The final financial pages are for Bluestone and Friends of Bluestone. The Relations Committee will be reporting on their work around triennial visits and an updated communications plan. Several committees will not be making oral reports at this meeting, but have provided written reports that can be found at the end of the committee section in the packet. There you'll find the written report of the Bluestone Committee, which lifts up retreats that are happening, property concerns, and the ongoing work of the committee. You'll also find the written report of the Committee on Representation, whose work is to advise the Presbytery on how it's living out principles of unity and diversity. You will find their suggestions for greater diversity as part of their report. As the meeting draws to a close, we will celebrate the installation of committee chairs for 2019 and Presbytery leaders. Our moderator for 2019, Steve Hornbeck, however, will not be installed as he is attending moderator training event provided by the PCUSA in Louisville. He will be installed during worship at the February meeting. Following the installation, if there's any new business that was introduced before lunch, it will be taken up by the body. At the beginning of the afternoon, hard copies of Presbytery evaluations will be distributed to each person present. Please take the time to complete this to help us with planning for future meetings. Please put these and your name tags in the boxes by the door as you leave. We will read the evaluations and recycle the name tags. The meeting will conclude with a charge and benediction by the moderator. And then we will depart after a long day, long discussions, and perhaps facing long travel times. But before you click off on this video, I encourage you to look at that third part of the packet. You'll find the worship bulletin, as I mentioned earlier, and you'll also find flyers describing upcoming events. These include flyers for toolbox courses for 2019, designed for those interested in continuing education and knowing more on particular topics. The Creative Worship and Lent Toolbox course will be held in January 2019, and there is a flyer to register for it. There are also flyers for Youth in Service on February 2nd, for Festival of Faith with Brian McLaren as our keynote presenter on April 6th, for the Presbyterian Youth Triennium to be held in July, and for Bluestone Summer Camp, including the summer schedule, staffing needs, and Send a Kid to Camp program. As I mentioned, by the end of the day, you will be tired. But remember, your work as a commissioner to this meeting is not complete until you share information gleaned, actions taken, and flyers distributed with your session and congregation. As always, I hope this video is helpful to you as you make plans to attend the Presbytery meeting on Thursday. If you have any feedback, positive or not, please feel free to catch me at the meeting or put comments on your evaluation sheet. I look forward to seeing you on Thursday. Thank you for your time and attention.